Welcome to Seymour from the Front Pew podcast, coming to you from the broadcast studio at Seymour First Baptist Church in Seymour, Tennessee, and featuring thoughts and discussions around loving God, loving others, making disciples, and living the life. I am your host, Tiger Brooks, and now, on to the podcast. We had to get all our pigs aimed in the right direction before we could go.
Hey, listen!
Welcome back to Seymour from the Front Pew. It's been a hot minute since the fellas have been in the chairs. We had relinquished our seats to our wives over the past several episodes. And so since we're back, Jason has to play with the pigs. He's missed his herd, and
my herd.
Now he's back, and he is
that'll do, pig.
He's got him corralled around the lip of his mug. What mug we rocking today?
Of course,
I can't move it. If I move it, they're going to take
It's a Tar
swimming.
Heel
I'm
mug.
going to go swimming.
Spin it.
It's appropriate that the
It's
pigs
facing this way, so they can
pigs are
see it.
circling around the tar pit there.
Yeah, I got my Carolina one. He's got his Tennessee Titans one.
You know I'm a true fan, and I'm still repping the Titans.
That's right.
Now.
This gift of these cups came before you came along, so you don't have this cup.
Yep.
I got a glorious Cardinals one. Although I've used it so much. It's
Oh, so y'all have like
yeah. These
Matching
are all
same.
Yeah,
gifts.
so
Yeah,
one
it was a
Christmas,
gift.
somebody got us
all cups.
cups.
Yep.
So
An
anyway,
insulated
I can talk to him.
Cardinal cup is the way to
hook
our
a brother up. Hook a brother up. All right,
I
so
don't think he listens to the podcast.
Yeah, right.
mine is got well cured.
it is.
Good.
I-
Yes,
That's because
Right.
you
He
never
never
clean
washes
it, you
it. It's
nasty
gotta-
individual.
you don't wash coffee cups.
It's got a
Yeah, you do. Yeah, you do.
it's
I
got a
mean,
very
you
nice
don't, but-
patina on
Have
the
y'all
inside.
never? You know that, right? You don't wash coffee cups,
I'm not
like, especially with like soap and scrub them.
I'm not an everyday guy, but I mean, like,
Oh.
at least once a month.
Why do I feel
No.
like if Corey and Melody like spent, I don't know, like 6 months apart, she'd come home and be like, "You don't wash toilet bowls. You just it's
Yeah.
a toilet. It
No, you
flushes.
clean
You don't-
toilet
Yeah.
bowls, but like it's like a cast iron skillet. You don't put soap on a cast iron skillet.
No, but you still clean it.
Yeah, I still rinse it and clean it. I just don't use soap and like you don't want to scrub the coffee off of it.
You
The-
don't? You don't?
I'm glad you don't take that
No.
principle
That's-
with your teeth.
It's organic material.
no,
That means that
you.
organisms can
The
live in it.
military guys are going to comment and prove me right on all this.
What you do in a foxholes?
No. I mean, even the office guys, like you have a patina to your coffee cup.
He also doesn't change his contacts. So, I mean,
Yeah,
That's true.
right.
Oh, let's not go there.
Maybe that's a podcast topic. Just how disgusting is Corey?
Things you may never
know about your
want to know about your pastor. All right, so
I do
today,
rotate them and use different cups for different seasons. It's almost time to bring back the UT cup.
when
would you not?
would you not have it?
They're doing a lot better than the Titans.
You're in the throes
Well,
of football season.
It just like you need the big win first.
Yeah.
Okay.
Kent
coming.
State didn't count.
No. Arkansas might count.
Well, listen to Florida State boy over here talking about
We don't know anything about winning.
wins.
Right. See? Yeah, anyway. And the Cardinals this year.
We lost to like Bob Jones University last week, I think. So we're terrible.
Anywho, we're going to get on down the road.
That would killed it.
We've got sort of a hybrid broadcast that we have planned. If we get to everything, we will see. But we just wrapped up the stewardship series. Oh no, we just wrapped up the stewardship series. This ought to be good.
Yeah.
For those of you who are not watching on YouTube,
I'm about to have a tiger beard.
Pastor Corey is putting on his wife's beard so she could look like me.
His wife's beard.
Yeah.
I'm glad it's one that comes on and off. So my wife's beard. So anyway.
Yeah.
Go.
Very nice.
Nice touch.
Kind of a Methuselah thing going on
There
there.
we go. There we go.
Gandalf the Gray.
So we're going to talk
This
about.
hair in your mouth all the
We're
time.
never going to get to this.
So that's the one reason I don't like the mustache part. Yeah, it kind of gets on my nerves. But
You get used to it.
are you ready?
Yeah.
I got one more thing to interrupt you from. I'm
Okay,
waiting
go
for you
ahead.
to go.
Go ahead.
No, I'm waiting for you to start.
Go ahead. What are we talking about? What are we talking about today, Tiger? Stewardship.
Stewardship.
With a U?
She's not,
An E, a W, and a T.
she's not even.
I thought it was with a U.
Bless her heart.
Hey, have y'all heard of Jersey in the
Jersey.
in the Bible?
Yeah. Jersey from
People
Bethlehem.
listening are like,
It's not the Jersey boys. It's the Jersey girl.
Jersey.
Jersey.
Bless her
Sorry.
heart. We love you, Shelby.
We do.
So we're going to talk about stewardship and Guatemala. Oh, you didn't interrupt.
Yet.
We wrapped up our stewardship series. How many weeks did we go?
4.
4 weeks. We've talked about stewarding different aspects of life, everything from your own wealth and your financial resources
Yep.
to
Giftedness. So in the middle of that, we looked at just again, to me, for peace of mind and those type of things. We looked at where the money goes inside the life of our church. As what I would say is, we're talking about stewardship to the personal level, that we're to be a part of giving toward the church. I think it's important for people to understand that the church is stewarding what comes in well, and so that's why we make that fit. And then we talked about spiritual gifts and using your gifting inside the life of the church. And I've already heard a couple people looking for different ways to plug in and do that. I want to encourage everybody to continue to do that. And again, our commitment is that we'll help resource you and try to help you find those places. And I would just remind everybody, like, we have needs within the life of the church, and you have gifts because of how God has gifted you and placed you inside the body, and those things need to align for us to do things well, like what we need to do, how we need to go about doing things. We need to do those well. And then the last one was
stewarding the gospel.
stewarding the gospel. Yeah. Yeah.
And it was interesting how all of that kind of came together with other things that were going on in the life of the church, because the same time you were doing the spiritual gifts week,
Yeah.
I was kind of coming to that point in the new member merge that we talk about the very same thing. And so we had many, many spiritual gifts analyses being printed and going out amongst the church brethren. And then we had, you ended up with the gospel last week, and we had the men's event that really dovetailed well. So God knows what he's doing when he does this. So
Yes, and again, I didn't think about this last night, and then our class starting last night on Share Jesus Without Fear, and we had a great
30 people,
number.
30
of
people
there,
signed up. Yeah.
And I think there were 24 or something like that in the class last night, and would remind you that you can still go to that class. And,
We ordered more books today.
That's awesome. Yeah.
So for the uninitiated, they didn't hear the sermons. They've, not been keyed in on what we're doing in terms of a series, but we're talking about stewardship. And there is a stigma that exists out there, I guess, that, churches are always asking for money. People that don't go to church typically think that churches are always asking for money, and they use that as an excuse not to go to church. Let's speak just for a moment to those who say either churches are always asking for money, and tithing is an Old Testament pattern of behavior that is no longer applicable to the modern church.
Sorry, I'm somewhat distracted.
Yeah,
Sorry.
I see
Anyway,
that.
so I'm applying what? Sorry.
Yeah, so
That's not somewhat.
that was.
Could you repeat the entirety of what you
completely-
just said? Because I was not listening.
I'm completely ignoring the bearded man to my right, which is everyday occurrence. But the person that may be listening right now that didn't listen to the stewardship series, who is jaded about giving, and jaded about money in the church, they say that churches are always asking for money. Why would you preach on stewardship? Which is obviously you've never been to church,
Right.
or hadn't been in a long time. or that tithing is an Old Testament
principle. Yeah.
principle that is no longer applicable in a New Testament age.
Yeah.
Let's answer those.
If I summarize that,
Yeah.
try to do that quickly, is one is I believe we see that affirmed through Jesus' life and ministry in the Gospels. And not only that, then I think we see that affirmed through Paul's teaching. Did he say a tithe? No, but he talked about each giving as they were able, and
in most cases went above.
yeah, and most places went above. And then we also, so we pair that with a lot. Okay, so like to me, that's Paul pointing us toward a percentage style of giving. That it's not about a dollar amount. It's not about these things, but it is a based on your blessings and those types of things. We see that Jesus practiced this stewardship with his life. We never see a point in time where he tells disciples not to give, not to participate, not to do. And then we pair that also with what we know historically. We know historically that first century believers, and even before Old Testament Jewish, they were giving somewhere around 30% of their income, of their blessings and those types of things. And you pair that, then you look at our modern American giving, and the average believer is giving something like 2.3%. So which really points to, I would say, a vast majority of people aren't giving at all.
Yeah.
To get the percentage that low, it has to mean that the vast majority of believers aren't giving at all.
Mm-hmm.
And so, again, I think what we do is say, we see these things, and because of our failure in this historically is what's put us in the place where even like, again, this response to the disaster and the floodings and everything that's gone on here, so many people are going to be dependent upon government assistance and help. I don't think that that's God's plan for how all this should work. But because the giving is so low in the life of the church can't meet those needs. When really, I think our world is designed for the church to meet those needs.
Mm-hmm.
But with giving at 2.3%, we can't do it.
Yeah.
But if believers were giving at a 10% plus style level, when these needs come along, we would be the powerhouse force of good to show the world Christ and show the world what is needed and how he loves us and how he's providing through the church and all the other things. And I get that there's a lot of things that keep us from being able to do. I mean, there's a lot of things that have led to where we are. It's it's a failure of people to manage those things well, to steward those things well, and all of those types of things. But we can only use those things as excuses for so long not to be obedient.
Mm-hmm.
We've still got to bring ourselves back in obedience in those areas. So
I would simply say, I don't know that you necessarily hit upon these unless it was while I was in Guatemala, but I think there's a fundamental worldview that Christians need to consider in terms of how they view what is theirs, quote unquote, what is theirs. Because when you look at, like, I think there's a passage, I think it's in First Chronicles. I know there's a passage. At the time that they were making preparations for the construction of the temple, we know that was going to go to that Solomon was going to bring that to fruition, but David was preparing the way. And there's a passage there where they are collecting all of these things, all of the materials, gold and silver and the fine fabrics and linens and all those kinds of things to prepare to get ready to do the temple. And all of these things are flooding in. And David reflects on this, and he says, basically, from your hand, we have been able to bless you. He recognized that everything that they had was God's. What they were personally able to acquire was just on loan from God.
Yeah.
And from God, they were able to bless God.
Yeah.
It's a really neat passage that I use when I'm talking with financial stuff with premarital couples and stuff. And so I think that if people stop thinking that, oh, this is mine and I'm going to give God a little bit, it's all God's that He's blessed you with. How are you going to steward the material and the wealth that He has given you? Is really the question that we need to be asking.
Again, even if we move toward the giving of where we should be, and we get into those ranges, we are still called to rightfully and faithfully steward the rest of that, the rest of the 85, 90%, wherever we land on all that, the 60%. I mean, we're called to steward that in a way that reflects Christ. We're called to steward it in a way that helps advance the gospel. And, whether that frees us to go on mission trip or just do things with what, again, I even think of examples and things that I've heard and know. I mean, I know we've got some people in the life of our church and in East Tennessee where, God's blessed them with a piece of property and they try to use that, let the church use it for events, or they try to provide for people when they're having a hard time or difficulty, or because stewardship is more than just that money element. I mean, it's that ownership that what I have, the house, the cars, I need to be stewarding all those things well. Even paying my bills on time is part of stewarding that well, being reflective of who Christ is and all those things. Like those are part of what we're called to be and do. And yes, I think it is a worldview perspective to how we view what we have. Do we view it as ours? Do we view it as God's, and He's entrusted these parts to us, these things to us?
And even the approach where if you want to take a hard line and say, okay, I'm giving 10% to God and recognize that is the tithe specifically, it doesn't mean that the other 90% is completely out of the realm of what God can do with it. It's every bit of your wealth is filtered through how does God want me to use this?
Yeah. Right.
I think is the healthy and biblical approach to the way that we do that. And so I think that when people kind of get a hold of that and they recognize that this is not the church, money grubbing and asking for your money. This is simply looking at what a believer, a Christian who believes the Bible, understanding what the Bible says and living in that. And then, and like you said, you made this point that it is the only place in the Bible that God says, test me in this.
Yeah, right. And again, like testimony after testimony of how people have done that and God bless them. I mean, from things of, like I've even heard testimony of people that, again, committed to tithing, knew that writing that check or giving that amount was going to cause them to be short of where they were needed to be for the month, but they committed to doing it first. And then being blessed back almost to the exact penny with what they had done to be able to take care of those things. And just so many testimonies similar to that happened in different ways. Again, I can vividly remember a testimony of a guy that committed to all that. And in his words, he was blessed with overtime that more than made up for what they were short. And again, he tithed on that overtime. And, I can't tell you that it's always going to be financial blessings back, it may be blessings back with time. It may be blessings back with your family, or it may be that things get harder. Sometimes things get harder. Sometimes you get an IRS letter or whatever else, and things get harder when you commit to all of that. But the call is still obedience and faith and trust in that, and know that God is telling you, test me in this, and you'll see me pour out blessings.
I think for you guys, to think about those aspects of stewarding your spiritual gifts, I think maybe that and stewarding your time, both of you see that in your areas of ministry. You have probably the biggest areas of need in terms of needing human resources for children's ministry and student ministry and things, and you have a worship ministry that benefits from the fact that people see that they need to be marshaling their talents and gifts and abilities. And so through this series, I'm just curious if either of you have seen people kind of come up and go, hey, I want to get involved. I need to be doing this. This was what God brought to mind as I listened to this particular message, or, in my quiet times. How has that affected either of you?
Yeah, I mean, I have definitely in the last 4 weeks already had people say, hey, this is something I used to do or that I'm good at, and I would be interested in plugging in some way using that gift. It's probably the same people Corey was talking about a minute ago. And so that's always cool because, for us, especially as we grow, there are more and more things we can do because other people with different giftings come along. And so as you open those, but you also, how it is in leading ministry, you don't want to try and do something new if you don't have someone with the gifting to kind of help spearhead that. Because there's only a capacity that us as the leaders can even really devote to it. So anyway, so people definitely have come up, and I think some of it also will come in the coming months too. I think with a lot of people, it has to sit on them for a while, and realize, what, I really do need to be plugging in this area or that area. So there's probably more too that are doing it, and I just don't even recognize it. So.
How about you?
Yeah, I mean, I think kids ministry and student ministry, my hope is it's the latter of what he just said, is that in the next month we see people have set on that and they realize the hard part for student and kids, I feel like, is that we ask for it all year.
Yeah.
Because it is, I mean, we've had this conversation, and I don't think this is a new conversation, that unfortunately kids ministry especially, but also student ministry, for whatever reason, and I think there are multiple reasons, it is always, in just about every church, it is a place that feels like you're never caught up with needing workers.
Yeah.
And again, I said there's multiple reasons. I think there are genuinely people that can't do kids ministry. I get that, and I don't fault them for that. Sometimes it is physical limitations that prevent you from being able to work with kids, and that's and I get that. But I've also had numerous conversations with folks over the years, and I'm not just talking about since I've been here. I'm talking about in 19 years of ministry. The conversation I think that bothers me the most, if I can just kind of put that out there for a moment, is
I know where you're going.
That no, I've done that. I've done my duty in that. I've retired from that.
Ministry retirees.
And that's the hard one.
It's not a hard one. It's just unbiblical.
It is.
I mean, I will say, I think that can shift.
It can.
I think someone can go and serve somewhere else.
In different areas.
But the idea of retiring from service inside the life of the church is unbiblical.
Yep.
You are not done. You are not finished.
Mm-hmm.
There is never that time. And so it's just flat unbiblical. Like, now again, are you able to serve with 3-year-olds or...
Right. That shifts. Yes.
That shifts. It can shift. It may not shift. I've known some incredible men and ladies that have served in children's ministry all the way up until the point where they were just literally physically unable to do that. But, but again, like, to me, we don't do any of us any good if we just call it hard. It's just unbiblical. It's just disobedience. And again, stewardship of gifts, of money, it all comes down to, are we going to be obedient to what Christ tells us to?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Easy.
And I do think that is the hard part, that, recognizing that. And some people, like kids ministry, I get it. There's times it's hard.
It's hard.
I mean, it's not easy. Student ministry is not easy. Can it be an abundance of blessings? Yeah. Absolutely. And I think for most of those that do commit themselves to it, they experience that abundance of blessing that they get to pour into the lives of the younger generation, and that's the hard part of recognizing too, that you look at our church, and God has continued to bless our church with significant growth, and a lot of those are families. And the hard part is that the areas that do seem to lag behind the most whenever a church is growing is the kids ministry and the student ministry. And for some, there's a good reason for that. We don't want to just plug in anyone in our kids ministry and our student ministry. We want to know who they are and can we trust, and because we're entrusting
we don't do any of those quickly. Like
Correct.
Like
So
someone joins our church,
there.
it's not they're in Wednesday night kids ministry in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Or whatever.
It's definitely not a if you can fog a mirror, come on back kind of deal.
Yeah.
It's hey, we're gonna vet you and make sure you're ready and able to do this.
But I would also say there are so many people that don't feel like they have the ability to serve kids and students. And I'm like, man, I have seen it time and time again. Those individuals that, maybe you can't go in and pick up babies or you do anything like that, but our students and our kids need all generations loving them.
Yeah.
And I think that is so valuable and goes beyond what anybody I think realizes, that whenever kids see senior adults loving them, when they see, middle-aged loving them, when they see, for kids, they see our students loving them. I think there is real value that happens with that multi-generational service, I should say. And then same thing with students, to have senior adults in there and to have folks from all ages that are serving them and pouring into them and speaking into life lessons and circumstances for them. And so I think that does go back to the fact that, you look at the biblical model and the biblical understanding of stewarding your time and your services, your abilities and talents that God has given you. They need it. Mm-hmm. We need it in those areas. And so, we are always looking for those needs, and that's never going to stop.
Yeah. Yeah.
Very cool. Something to think about. I want to transition now to talk about a trip that Austin and I just got back from and the church participated in, which was really cool for me because, I've said this in a couple of different contexts, but I've been to Central America numerous times. I think we're up to upwards of 15 times now. And yet in my 2 years that I've been here, I hadn't been on this trip. And I've just heard you guys talking about it. And I heard the personalities. I've heard about the church. I've heard about the community. I've heard about Rosie's. I've heard all those stories, and they are often reflected upon fondly from those who have been on the trips in the past. And so I finally got to experience that. And I will just jump out and say, what a blessing. Mm-hmm. I mean, we had 17 of us went. 18 church members participated because we have had one there almost a year now. And it was just truly a blessing. It was just Austin and I have talked about it. I don't want to steal all your thunder, but it was a hodgepodge of personalities. It was across the spectrum of different people from different walks of life, different approaches to life, all that kind of stuff. And you're always wondering, how's this going to work out? The rooming situations with everybody.
I was real worried about my roommate.
Okay. Yeah.
Sounds like I would have been too.
Yeah. Anyway, it couldn't have worked out better. I mean, it was truly a blessing, and story after story of why each of those individuals were there, I think could be talked about down to the person across the week. And so anyway, you're the team leader, so I'm going to acquiesce to your great leadership, sir.
I don't know. I don't know where to launch in. I mean, we've talked about Guatemala. It's the kind of thing where I wish every church member had an opportunity to go.
It's interesting, honestly, just to give us a little jumping off point. I think jumping off of stewardship to Guatemala is pretty interesting because we are now in year 3 of seeing how God is continuing to use the things that we've been faithful to do over the past 3 years of going. That's really a neat aspect of it.
I've had this thought. I hope it'll come out the right way when it comes out of my mouth. We were talking about you were just talking about the hard part of when it comes to stewardship. probably getting plugged into children's and youth ministry is the hardest of the ministries within the life of the church to jump into. And I think that a lot of people's, I would probably put myself in that a lot of times. We go for the low-hanging fruit.
Yeah.
And so when I'm going to plug into church, let me grab the low-hanging fruit and call that my service. And I can check that off and say, I'm serving the church in this way. And not demeaning several of the opportunities that we have, because we need everything. But people will say, well, I do this, and it's pretty nominal and pretty easy, and I like it. And so since that's my area of service, I'm not going to serve in kids or whatever, because kids is the hard thing. I look back to, I didn't use the same words, but with the team in Guatemala, we talked about that a lot, is that on some level, when you're on a mission trip, it's low-hanging fruit. You have none of life's distractions, or nominal. You are there for a purpose. You have some insulation because you have that relationship with those people for a week, and then you're gone. The hard thing is to come home, and when life has a million distractions, to still be sharing the gospel. When there's a chance that person who you've already established a relationship with doesn't react well, and your relationships begin to be hindered because of you trying to share the gospel with them, that becomes harder. And so our nature is to not do the hard thing. But part of what we want to see, there's a very real element we're about to talk about with Guatemala and with any mission trip, of what you're doing while you're there and the impact you have. But what we're really looking for is for you as the believer to go to make that impact, for it be the impact to you, and then you come home and it change how you live here.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And that's the hard thing. And so as we're home this week, and we've been home for, 3 days, 4 days, life comes back at you hard. Yeah. Are you still really living the same way you lived while you were in Guatemala? And so that's where I say I wish every church member could, because I think it would ignite a fire under a lot of people that need their fire lit. And so...
Well, and I didn't get to go on this trip, but Melody, my wife, did. It was the first time she got to go to Guatemala, and picking up what you're saying, Austin, I know that Austin challenged the team to think evangelistically about someone when they got home. And I know that there are multiple from the team that are doing that already. Mm-hmm. And, that's one of the reasons why we go and do international missions, because we realize what we do there can be done here. The church there, we are empowering to do those things. And your brothers and sisters inside the life of our church can help you and empower you to do the same things here. And that is why that I believe that's one of the purposes that God has us doing missions the way that we're doing them, and why we should be doing them.
Mm-hmm. And so I told the team there, and that I think one of the things that's special, I asked them to raise their hand on the last night, and I asked the question, how many of you either sat down to talk to someone and did not know what was about to come out of your mouth, or began down a path but did not know what was coming next? And every single person raised their hand. I said, well, that's because you obeyed, and then the Holy Spirit takes over.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And I think so often we at home just don't obey.
Yeah.
And that goes back to what you preached on this past Sunday about how we steward the gospel and how we share the gospel is a lot of what you talked about. And I just wanted to ring the bell. This is what we just talked about.
Right.
When you understand, it's very hard to understand the Holy Spirit, but the more you close yourself off to the Holy Spirit, the less you're going to understand the Holy Spirit. The more you just obey. You feel led to have that conversation with that person who's been laid on your heart. No, you don't have to have all the answers. You don't have to know the path you're walking. You just have to trust the Holy Spirit to guide you in that. But the problem is so often we go, well, I just can't. I can't make that first step.
Right. Yeah.
When you trust the Holy Spirit to take over after that first step, you'll see how he moves. Yeah. And so...
to try to speak some generalities, but some specifics all at the same time.
Right.
How many of your team... How many of their struggles, trials,
oh gosh, yeah,
their experiences, their failures, Did the Spirit use to put them right in the same place?
And I think that's a good example. So one of our individuals had to give up smoking to come on the trip. And he even said the last night, he was in a position where someone, because in that culture, smoking is very, very frowned upon. And
one of the reasons why we don't let people from our teams
smoke while they're
there.
That's right. So, and of course, as God would do, God put someone in that person's path who their real hang up to coming to Jesus was that they smoked. Well, lo and behold, there it is. Let me tell you about that. I gave it up just to come on this trip. But I didn't have to give up smoking to come to Jesus.
Yeah.
And
God didn't love me any less. He didn't.
That's right.
Refuse to go to the cross because I was still holding on to my cigarettes.
Right. And in that culture, men especially, there's a lot of alcoholism. So God uses the testimony of another individual who had struggled with alcoholism and stuff. And so if you recognize, I asked the team that, if you recognize that God used your story to speak to someone here specifically, we were with one of the translators who had a preemie baby, and lo and behold, we were in the house with someone who had a preemie baby, and she used that to connect with the woman and then share the gospel. Those little things about why God brought you on this trip and then put you in the path of that individual. That's the exact same thing you have in your life at home.
And I think
there are people in your life that your story is meant to connect to.
But we've been afraid to start.
We're scared.
We're scared to start the conversation. We don't know where it's going to go, and so we never get the opportunity to use the power of the story that God has placed in our lives because we are afraid to start it. We're afraid to begin down that road, and there's a vulnerability there that we have to get used to, get ready to be able to get past.
Yeah.
And I guess it maybe even a dependency, and that's part of it. Again, I was in a meeting last night and told some of my own control issues. Right. I mean, so because it's hard to get past that point of being dependent on those needs, on the Spirit to truly guide.
Yeah.
When I don't know what's going to come next.
Yeah. No, I had a conversation with someone yesterday, actually, and we were kind of walking through, just what God's doing in his life. And one of the things that came up, he was talking about, I've got a cousin who I know's, probably not a believer, and kind of having that conversation a little bit. And he just made the comment, he said, maybe God's given you that opportunity to do that, and he's walking you through this so that you can have that conversation. He said, yeah, but I'm afraid of what it's going to do to the relationship.
Yeah.
And I think that's the fear that many of us have, is that when we're in Guatemala, we don't have relationships with people. We feel like we can go and we can do and we can say, and we go home, and our life and their life is what it is. And it, but yet we see in Guatemala, I recognize the most important thing that you need is Christ. And I'm willing to risk anything else and put everything else on the table so that you have what I believe is your greatest need. And I think the hard part is we get home. What do? We quickly, because we become personally invested in it, we elevate other things to being more important than their need for Christ. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the important thing, is that we have to understand that even though we have personal relationships with these people, their need for Christ is still more important than their need for the relationship with me. And I think we sometimes leverage that and say, this is more important. Well, no, it's not. The need for Jesus Christ is still more important.
Yeah. That's what Tiger said.
I said
that's exactly what he said.
Well, as soon as Austin kind of finished his spiel on the last night, I kind of dovetailed it because I wanted to help people reframe it as they get back home. Mm-hmm. Because that's the thing. We don't say the thing that is the most important aspect of our lives. Yeah. We don't share that with other people because we're afraid of how they will react. Mm-hmm. And I think it's a lie from the pit of hell. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Because, I mean, when you think about as a believer, we want to be true and authentic in and of ourselves.
Yep.
The most important relationship in my life is the relationship I have with Jesus.
Yep.
I love my wife. I love my daughter, but the most important relationship is Jesus. We recognize that. It's not even, that's a no-brainer. But in our relationships with people, whether it is family members or coworkers or close friends, the most important characteristic of your life is your relationship with Jesus.
Yeah.
And if you say, I don't want to risk my relationship with this person by sharing the most important aspect of who you are, think about that for just a minute. What is the quality of that relationship if you can't share your authentic self?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so, and then if you look at it from the other point of view is, if that person is lost and you don't want to offend them,
Yeah.
carry that out to the nth degree. Okay. You care about this person, you love this person, you want a relationship with this person, they're lost, they're going to bust hell wide open one day. I'm very blunt. They're going to bust hell wide open if perhaps you don't share what is most important about it. Because who else are they going to listen to that from other than a person that they love and respect? And so I hope that it pushes people out of their comfort zone a little bit, but I hope it helps you reframe the way that you approach that, because everything I said, I think, is true.
Yeah.
And it helps us to, now, I don't mean by that you carry around your 30-pound King James Bible and beat people over the head with it.
Right.
And you share the truth in love. You continue to try to be winsome, and you try to be your authentic self, but you just say, hey, I love you too much to not tell you this.
The relationship is still important.
Yeah.
Right. And
It just means that the relationship with Christ is more important.
And I
you
think
need
that there's
this.
an element of, you have to be able to portray to that friend, that loved one, that our relationship is so important to me
Right.
that I have to share this with you.
Yeah.
I go back to the old video of Penn and Teller. Penn
Yeah, I was thinking about
shared with a guy shared the gospel with him on the Las Vegas Strip, and he didn't, as far as we know, he didn't make a decision or whatever else, but he dove in on kind of a self-reflecting video that he did. That if you believe this, how much do you have to hate someone to not share this with them?
Correct. Yeah.
That you don't want this for them. And so, to me, again, if an unbeliever can see that from the love of someone that was willing to share with them because they genuinely believed that, what does it say about the love we have for those relationships, for those people, or the genuineness of our relationship with Christ?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I think also I would say to the listener out there, because you can listen to that and go, well, those guys are professional Christians.
it's not easy for me. man.
It's
hard
not.
for me.
And I think that's us. We're challenging you, but we are challenged ourselves in all of that. I mean, I even, like for me personally, we did not have, when we were down there this time, we had planned on sending 6 teams of 3 every day. So you have 3 gringos plus a translator plus any church members, and that's a house
That's a whole
full.
other story too.
But we wound up not having the transportation to do that. So often it was 5 or 6 gringos and 2 translators. And so we put the challenge out. I said, hey, if you're going to do that, don't all go in the house. Hang out on the street corner while 3 people are in there and find some people to engage with. And I found I think you were with me that day. And that is way outside I mean, you may think I'm an extrovert, and I am about certain things, but I'm really not with approaching people I don't know. And so I was like, all right, I got to put feet to what I'm saying. So the first house, that's what I did. And I walked up and talked to these 2 guys. And man, did it push me to be able to do that. So I would say to y'all, and I felt wickedly uncomfortable. Plus, I sweat. I don't know if you've known this about me, but I sweat more than any human being alive.
I don't know. No.
And
I get pretty moist myself.
did you see me up there trying to play the guitar?
Yeah.
And it's that much worse when I'm trying to do Spanish.
Yeah.
I just like the pressure, I just immediately flush and just pour. And so I'm trying to talk to this random fella building a house, and I'm just like dripping.
Flop sweat.
And Guatemalans don't sweat.
No, they don't. And so he's like, not only is this tall, bald man that I've never seen before, but why is he so wet? Anyway.
It was a little rainy, so you got a little bit of cover.
There was no rain at that point. Anyway, I say that to say that, like, we're not saying, like, hey, we're great at this and whatnot. I mean, I try and take opportunities to push myself both there and then to carry that home. So we're just trying to come alongside you and just challenge you.
Yeah.
It's kind of like the coach telling the kid, that doesn't mean the coach can still do what he's asking the kid to do. He's just trying to encourage and make them better.
Yeah.
I would say that to that point, it gets easier the more practice that you have doing it.
It doesn't get easier to start it necessarily, but you trust the results. You trust the Spirit. You know that there is
It's like riding a ride or riding in a vehicle that you've never ridden in before. After you've done it a little while, you understand the nuances of it and you can go with it.
So I will also say, though, I had another conversation in Guatemala. I just keep with one of the guys who is more introverted and everything. We were out on a thing, and I was the one talking, and I launched in and shared the gospel with this woman, and I kind of read from the situation. She didn't really know the gospel story at all. So I went from creation all the way through and everything. And we got done and got in the back of the truck, and the guy said, "Man, I can't believe how good you can share that, and I wish I had that," and all this stuff. And I said, that's not really what it's about. I said, I can be as nuanced as I've told the gospel story, yes, however many hundreds of times in my life. So it comes out. But I said, the thing about you've got to understand about the Holy Spirit and how all this stuff we're talking about works is you don't have to have that nuanced approach to it. I said, you need to use what you have.
That's right.
Just because I speak in front of people all the time and can talk forever does not make my ability to share the gospel any more eloquent than what you have. It does not make the words that I speak have any more power or any of that. I said, because when we walk in and I'm supposed to talk in this one, the Holy Spirit's on me the same as when you walk in and it's your turn to share. The Holy Spirit's just on you, and the way it's going to come out of you is maybe what that person needs to hear.
Yeah.
Because there are plenty of people who might not want to hear a big, long speech like I have. And so in that growth, you can say, well, I don't have this polished. God has given you the gifts for the appropriate time.
Yeah.
So
another neat element, I think, as we kind of, just an incredible thing. I even asked a couple of the guys and trip members, Melody and I talked for a long time Sunday night after we laid down, but it is so hard to put into words the partnership that we have there. We are truly partnered with the church. We don't go and we don't go and just do stuff for them. We do it with them. They come along. There's very rarely the time that they aren't right there walking beside us, with us. We are trying to make sure that what we are doing aligns with what they want to do and how they're trying to reach their community. But even all these places where people are talking about going into the homes, man, you can talk to the members of the church, and they know these people. They know what they've experienced. They know what's holding them back. They're praying for them, and they are excited that there is someone there to come alongside and partner to come in and maybe even be able to say something that they haven't been able to say yet or vocalize or whatever else. And it is just a huge blessing to get to do it that way. I've done missions in a lot of places over the years. I've had some great partners. I've never had a partner church like this. It is it's a huge blessing. It's exciting to be a part of.
Well, and I would say that because of that, the experience is elevated because, and this was unique because I've honestly, in all the other trips I've had, I've never had a situation where almost every house that we approached, I got a debriefing as to
on the way.
All right, this person they're saved. They're just out of church. They've struggled with this. They've got a child that's struggling with this. They've got a husband that's struggling with this. And we had an ability to go, oh, well, then so-and-so needs to share in this one. This one would be good for that person. Huge elevation of the opportunity to share the gospel in possibly a nuanced way that is more palatable to that person's ear in that moment.
Yeah.
So
And
very cool.
Yeah, more Guatemala.
I have two other things, but go ahead.
No,
You're
you
the
go ahead
boss.
because I was going to go on to upcoming news stuff with all.
Oh yeah, okay, yeah. Let me tell two things. The first is that partnership idea. It's fleshing itself out in such unique ways. But again, relate that back to where you are in your mission field at home. Like God put people in your D group, people in your
exactly right.
Sunday school class who are meant to be those partners.
That's exactly right.
Who can give that. Like, okay, you've shared the gospel with your neighbor, and it didn't go much anywhere, but maybe you found out something about them. Well, can they connect with someone in your D group that they can begin to reach out to them? Have they had some kind of life experience? Someone passed away, something happened, and you can connect them with someone you know and give them that debrief where they can go in and have coffee with them and say, hey, my friend connected us because you and I know you recently had a miscarriage. Well, I've got a friend who just walked through that a couple years ago, and she'd like to be able to just sit down and maybe give you some words of wisdom, connect those dots, backstory, and leads to a gospel conversation. Like that's what we exist as a church for. That's why we have small groups. That's why. So lean into that. I want to tell a brief story. I've told Jason and a couple of others who have been on trips because it was just cool to see it come full circle. Part of the cool thing with working with a local church is seeing the same people and then seeing them grow.
Yeah.
My very first trip, day one, with Chase and Dylan and Max and Joe. We walked into a house and put concrete into a house. And it was a mom, 3 kids, and a dad who was an alcoholic and very absent. But he was there that day, and we shared the gospel with him and his 2 friends. And so we put concrete in their home. First trip. She was connected to the church, but not going. The next trip that Jason went on, they went back to that same house. The husband had left, and it was just the mom and the 3 boys. And on that trip, she prayed and received Christ. It's been now a year and a half since that trip, I think, for Jason. And we get there, and as part of the purpose of our trip this time around was they had a lot of new believers, but let's talk about what discipleship means, how to grow. Well, on Tuesday, which is day 3, that woman was there making house visits with us alongside. Wow. She's been saved on one of these trips. We've put concrete in her house. She's coming along for a house visit. And the first one we went into the house. And when we walked out, she said to me through a translator, she said, that was my ex-husband's sister. So that's got to be kind of hard.
Yeah.
And her husband, which we knew going in, her husband was leaving her, cheating on her, and probably going to leave her soon, an alcoholic. So similar situations. And we had presented the gospel. The woman did not pray to receive Christ that day or anything. So Mari said, that was me the first time you came to my house.
Wow.
She said, so I am praying that the path that I've been through, where I heard it one time, but it took the second time to really sink in and get saved. And it took my husband leaving on some level for me to realize my need and all this stuff. She said, I'm hoping that's me, that she follows the path that I did.
That's cool.
Yeah.
And that's just cool.
Yeah.
That's just cool to see that all come full circle and stuff. So, anyway.
Yeah. And so just as we wrap this up for a second, a reminder that there will be 3 trips next year to Guatemala. We have at least 2 more years that we'll be partnering with them. I really don't see it coming to an end right now as long as God's just continuing to work and move that. But there will be a spring, summer, and fall. And so we want you to be praying about that. And we are getting to a point where we have to limit how many people go for several different reasons. And we won't get into all that. But we'll be praying about that. We also have some new missions partnerships that are going to be starting to hopefully take root that we would love for you to be praying over. One is Blue Oval City in West Tennessee, partnering with a new church plant there that we hope is a catalyst style of plant, meaning that other churches are planted out of this plant. And so be praying for Jay and Lindsay Stevenson as they kick off this month. They'll have their launch service in the month of October to start that church, and we're looking at partnering with them financially and potentially teams and stuff like that. And then Vision Trip to India in January. So,
Just
good.
share Blue Oval City. I mean, somebody's listening. What is that?
What is Blue Oval
Real
City?
quick,
Sure. Yeah.
quick.
Blue Oval City is an area between Brownsville, Tennessee, and Memphis, Tennessee on I-40, where Ford has bought. It's something like 3,000 acres, and the intention is to build a Ford plant to manufacture the F-150 Lightning, and they have invested over $60 billion in these sites now. And so the reality is they are going to be moving and doing. And the area around the plant, population-wise, is something like 2,500 people, is expected to grow to 90,000 people over the next 9 to 10 years because of the plant and everything going on. And somebody will say, well, I read that they're not going to be doing the Lightning. Well, maybe and maybe not. It will take them 3 weeks to retrofit the plant to do any vehicle that Ford manufactures anywhere. And so they've invested so much money, they are not walking away from this. It is going to happen. And so even if it's a different truck or different car, it's going to happen. And so we are trying to be on the front end of these people coming from all around the world and all around the U.S. To have churches ready there, healthy churches planted there, so that we can reach the people that are coming into these areas. And so that's the goal of Blue Oval, and that's the idea behind the name. If you know Ford, it's a Blue Oval. I don't love Fords, but anyway,
very familiar with it.
Yes, right. Yes. So anyway, but that's the context there, and what. And again, just if you didn't know, I've tried to say this, but I try not to talk about it every time. The planter there was actually my college roommate, and so I am connected. I'm hoping that our church will be connected, and really, really excited about what's going on there. So
I think then in India, the big thing that we need our church family to recognize, India is not going to be something that a lot of people get to go to, but we want everyone praying about. The biggest thing we need is to try and get every church member to commit to pray for the family that we're specifically going to partner with in India, because we're going to be sending them as a light in darkness. And you'll hear a lot more about that as we come back. It's going to look a lot different. It's not like we're taking teams to India on the regular. It is that we need to mobilize the power of prayer for those individuals. And so you can even be praying now. You don't know their names. We don't actually even know their names yet. And we'll have to be very guarded about how we talk about that. But prayer is the greatest thing we can do as a partner in India. Yeah. And then also in Cincinnati, as we look to next year, continue to pray about your involvement in Cincinnati. And as we continue to work with Life Church in Monroe and grow that partnership. Mm-hmm.
Good deal. Stewardship and our Guatemala reflections.
It only took an hour.
Yeah.
Sorry.
This may be one podcast. It may be two. We don't know. We may break it up. But anyway, thank you for tuning in. We appreciate you listening. And as always, if something piqued your interest, be sure to send us an email and get back to us, and we'll try to get back to you. And as always, we appreciate you. And share, like, subscribe, all those things. We appreciate it. All right. Let's say bye, fellas.
See ya.
Thank you for listening to Seymour from the Front Pew. Our sole desire for this podcast is to glorify God by educating and encouraging His body. If you would like to learn more about anything you've heard today, feel free to reach out by email at staff@seymourfbc.org or by visiting our website at seymourfbc.org. If you're located near our community and do not have a church home, come worship with us at 10:15 a.m. on Sunday morning. Until then, we pray God's richest blessings on you and yours as you love God, love others, make disciples, and live the life.